your experience of suffering is two things. It is a story that your mind tells about your experience of yourself, and it is a set of physical sensations that accompany that story. And these two things play off of each other. So if I drop my ice cream on the ground, and there's this story in my head, I'm sad I ruined my ice cream. There's this physical sensation, this tension, this knottedness, this contraction arising in my solar plexus. And it's like, as I indulge in this story about this fucked up ice cream, oh God, I only had $5 in my pocket. I can't get another one. I really wanted that ice cream. You know, you feel this physical sensation bubble up, and it's like there's just so much density in those moments, you know? You feel stuck in mud. You feel utterly limited by something intangible, as if you've been trapped in this cage. And that's what all suffering is. Suffering is trapping yourself in a cage of denial. Because the very impulse to believe any of the stories you tell about yourself is an impulse to move away from true perspective. An impulse to move back into that old proverbial habit of separation, contraction, anxiety, planning, pain. It's two things: a story and physical sensations. I've said before that the whole function of the mind is to tell stories, and because that is the function of your mind, it means that your mind is utterly incapable of being completely reflective of truth. It will always be a distortion, because telling a story about yourself requires you to make a whole set of assumptions about your life. You have to see yourself as this finite individual, defined by this aggregate of experiences and perspectives you've accumulated throughout your life. With the ice cream, you see the ice cream as this independent object that has some kind of power over your well-being, that has the power to ruin your entire fucking mood just by dropping this little thing on the ground. Your mind cannot exist in the present because it's always referencing its prior knowledge and understanding. Because to see this ice cream as ice cream, you know, you have to have an image of what ice cream is. You have to have a conceptualization of what it means to be a person who eats ice cream and drops the ice cream on the ground. Like, you have to come up with this whole set of rationalizations to your direct experience, which really, you know very well, has nothing to do with the stories. Like, what is the experience of dropping ice cream on the ground? Let's be real direct about this for a second. It's a set of sensations that come into your awareness. The sound of the ice cream dropping, the visual sight of this thing on what you call the ground. And then it's this story about, oh, that's ice cream. That's the ground. This is me. I just dropped the ice cream. Like, these things come together. Your mind cannot exist in the present. Or it would be better to say that your mind's function is, which is what it's defined by, is entirely referential to something that you perceive in that moment as outside of yourself. Because you can't perceive what you take to be the past or the future as yourself if you see it as the past or the future. Because that means that you see it as something out of your touch, out of your sphere of being, if you will. So the first thing that you have to do when you catch yourself, and this is the whole thing about mysticism, is like you will be catching yourself over and over again. The minute that you catch yourself telling a story that gives you suffering, the first thing to do is to see through that immediately. And you get better at it over time. It becomes more and more instantaneous of a self-correction. I dropped the ice cream. Hold on a minute. What am I talking about? I dropped the ice cream. Like, that's just a set of sounds coming out of my mouth that I'm giving all of the weight to. You drop the story. It's okay. You're gonna be fine. I promise. The story is what's making you feel pain. And you will see that when you drop it. You see it when you tell the story, but it's like, it's all you know? It's so compelling. This victimhood that we latch onto. Like, I dropped the ice cream on the ground and now I have an excuse to cry and get sympathy and fuck, like, ugh, But you can drop it, and you'll have to, and you will. You always will, at some point. And then you're left with these physical sensations. And a lot of people fall into this trap, and myself included, where, like, okay, I've tried to drop the story, but I've got all of these tensions here, all this pain. How could I possibly be present when I feel so much pain? When my emotions manifest as these physical tensions that burn. See what you're doing? You're telling a story about the physical sensations. You're calling them pain. You're saying they hurt. You're saying that they stop you from being present. You're saying they're a problem. The self, the no self, if you will, is completely impartial to all raw experience. Even the experiences with such an intensity to them that sometimes you feel like you can't possibly have those experiences in an accepting and joyous way. The worst physical pain you can think of, the worst story you can think of about suffering, all of that is created by, pervaded by, and included within and as you. And that's not like a poetic way of trying to describe God. That is a as direct of an exploration of your direct experience of life as language can get to. So you respond to the story by just not even giving it your energy. Just coming back to what's actually happening, what's like real around you. And the same thing with the physical sensation. You don't have to label it as pain. It's okay. You don't have to say that it sucks. You don't have to indulge in it. You don't have to get sympathy. You can let yourself be happy. Any experience you ever have is an experience that is entirely yours. An experience which is overflowing with this indescribable realness. And the more willing you are to let yourself be happy, to simply like allow the stories to just flutter by, no matter how compelling they may seem, no matter how much it feels like, I have to answer this question or solve this problem or focus on this story because if I don't, then something will happen to me. Like, the more that you're able to just allow all of that to just be let go of. You don't let go of it. You let it be let go of. And that's not a semantic thing. That is like a very different way of approaching this experience, which I've talked about before. The minute you can do that is the minute that you bring yourself back to the place you've never left. And then you look at that fucking ice cream on the ground and you start laughing. And sometimes there's like these spontaneous releases, you know? And they happen more and more often, excuse me, and with more and more depth. And it's Rupert Spira says it's not easier said than done. It's easier done than said. So it's two things: a story and a set of sensations. And when you recognize that the story's never going to get you to truth, and the sensation is not what you take it to be, it's not the story you tell about it, it's just there like everything, and that's beauty. That's bliss. Fuck, that is amazing. And you didn't have to try at all. But you see, though, how habitual you find yourself getting sucked into that story. How everyone does this all the time. You know, we are obsessed with painting ourselves as perpetrators or as victims, as activists or as people with a purpose, with a real function in life, or as academics, as thinkers. We have all of these different stories that we always tell about ourselves. And look at how unhappy everyone is. It's okay. It's really okay.